Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? He says they're very fine people on both sides.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. You had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
You wouldn't even condemn David Duke, for God's sake.
You've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem.
How many times do I have to reject? I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. From the time I'm 5 years old, I reject.
Would you repudiate David Duke?
Sure.
David Duke and robocalls are out again, the white supremacist movement supporting you. Do you have any words for that?
Well, I disavow. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow, okay?
David Duke is a bad person who I disavowed on numerous occasions over the years.
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow.
David Duke is saying to his supporters and followers, vote for Donald Trump. White supremacists are saying, vote. Do you want those votes?
No, I don't want them, and I don't want him to say it.
And you don't want the supporters?
No, I don't want anything.
What do you think of white supremacists, by the way?
I don't like any group of hate.
David Duke announced his Senate candidacy, claiming your agenda.
Are you ready before you ask the question?
Newt Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate this guy no matter what it takes.
And I do. Rebuked. Is that okay? Rebuked.
Rebuked.
Done.
When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I've disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
And in a tweet today, President Trump condemned, quote, all types of racism and acts of violence.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure. He has yet once to condemn white supremacy, the neo-Nazis. He hasn't condemned the darn thing.
Trump's refusal to condemn, distance himself from white supremacists.
The Anti-Defamation League is already out there asking the president to clarify why he didn't condemn white supremacists.
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am.
When Chris joined, we had a news conference, and they asked me the exact same question. I said, I disavow. I disavowed then. I disavowed today on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. I disavowed again.
Just to clear it up this morning, can you, naming it, make a declarative statement that you denounce, that the president denounces it?
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists.
Do you want white supremacists to vote for you?
No, I don't at all. Not at all.
His campaign is denouncing a show of support from the KKK's official newspaper, as in the Ku Klux Klan.
In the same New York Times interview, he denounced white supremacists. He denounced the neo-Nazis who support him.
President Donald Trump signed a congressional joint resolution that condemns white supremacy, neo-Nazis, and other hate groups.
When he was asked to condemn white supremacists, he didn't.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
When specifically asked if he would denounce white supremacists, that the president dodged it.
I spoke out forcefully against hatred, bigotry, and violence, and strongly condemned the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, and the KKK.
Well, I have to say that it's disappointing that a sitting U.S. president can't outright condemn white supremacy.
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.
The President of the United States, in the year of our Lord 2020, refuses to condemn white supremacists.
Any group of hate, I don't like it. Any group of hate, I am, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's any other kind of supremacy, whether it's Antifa, whether it's any group of hate, I am very concerned about it, and I'll do something about it.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. You got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean, nice-looking guy.
My Democratic colleagues don't like me saying this. I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the black. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind a little bit.
As also noted, Robert C. Byrd was a parliamentary library, a keeper of the institution of the Senate, and he was the institution itself. For a lot of us, he was a friend, and he was a mentor, and he was a guide.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent.
Unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community. They're going to put you all back in chains.
If Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot.
The reason I was able to stay sequestered in my home is because some black woman was able to stack the grocery shelf.
Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing. There's about 100,000 of them, if you want to be rhetorically extreme about it, who are the predators. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
It's awful hard as well to get Latinx vaccinated as well. Why? They're worried that they'll be vaccinated and deported.
Because I was 29, I'm like the token black or the token woman. I was the token young person. Even call centers, which rushed overseas in the hundreds of thousands. How many times you get the call? I'd like to talk to you about your credit card.
But there's one more band member that I want you to meet. Ladies and gentlemen, our vocalist tonight, Michael Jackson. Michael, would you please stand?
He lied to voters, according to the New York Times, quoting aides of Biden's, about having marched in the civil rights movement.
And I got involved in the civil rights movement just as a kid.
I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff.
And the New York Times reports, quote, more than once, advisors had gently reminded Mr. Biden of the problem with this formulation. He had not actually marched during the civil rights movement, and more than once, Mr. Biden assured them that he understood and kept telling the story anyway. That is really, really weird.
One chapter receiving fresh scrutiny comes from his earliest years in the Senate, when he strongly opposed mandatory school busing. It was designed to achieve integration and a more equitable education. What's less known is how he followed the lead of some of the Senate's most fervent segregationists.
Working with segregationists on an anti-busing agenda is very scary.
1977, Biden worried that his children would grow up in a, quote, racial, his words, jungle if integration is not done in a, quote, orderly way, whatever that means.
On March 25th, 1977, Biden wrote, "My bill strikes at the heart of the injustice of court-ordered busing. It prohibits the federal courts from disrupting our educational system." Biden sought and received support from Mississippi Senator James Eastland, the Democratic chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and a leading symbol of Southern resistance to desegregation.
21 senators from the South were Democrats. How many of them became Republicans after the Civil Rights Act? The answer, 1. The other 20 stayed Democrats. In 1952, Eisenhower did not win a ton of the South. Eisenhower did win, however, 7 states in the South in 1956, after he sent federal troops down south. The reason that the Republican Party started to win in the South, it began in the 1950s, not after the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it was largely due to the movement of industry down south. It was new fringe members of the Republican Party, younger members of the Republican Party, who switched over to the Republican Party in the South, not old Democrats, who remained old Democrats and are still old Democrats today.
I think the concept of busing, which implicit in that concept is the question you just asked, or the statement within the question you just asked, that we are going to integrate people so that they all have the same access and they learn to grow up with one another and all the rest, is a rejection of the whole movement of black pride, is a rejection of the entire black awareness concept, where black is beautiful, black culture should be studied, and a cultural awareness of the importance of their own identity, their own individuality. And I think that's a healthy, solid proposal.